speech, allow me to read your profile first ya, Prof ya.
Yeah, okay, please.
All right. Professor Poppy Rufaidah SA, MBA, PhD is a professor at the Faculty of Economics and Business at Universitas Padjadjaran or UNPAD, Bandung, Indonesia, with an extensive career in international education and also academic leadership. She previously served as the Education and Cultural Attaché at the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia in Washington, D.C. from 2018 to 2022, where she became the founding president of the Washington Educational and Cultural Attaché Association, or WECAA, and her leadership in establishing WECAA earned her the Star of Excellence Award from the America Eurasia Center. Professor Poppy holds a PhD from the University of New South Wales and also an MBA from Murray State University and a bachelor degree from Universitas Padjadjaran. She also served as a Secretary General of the Indonesian Association of the Faculties of Economics and Business, or AFEBI, and also the Vice President for the Academy for Global Business Advancement, continuing to advance the academic collaborations and global engagement. It is an honor to have Professor Poppy in this GCRIS 2025. So now, Prof, the time is yours to deliver your keynote speech. Please welcome Professor Poppy.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I would like to open my screen first. Let me open the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, I see the opening ceremony was opened by the Vice Rector of the university. Distinguished participant, the academia may be representative from other institution. Good morning. It is an honor for me to speak today on behalf of the International Council of Women, where I'm representing as the Standing Committee of the Sustainable Development. This organization is the special consultative status in the United Nations, ECOSOC, Economic of Social Council, and also I'm representing here as the advisory board of the Indonesia National Council of Women. This organization has been known as the two prominent organization, both in the world and also in Indonesia, for building the commitment to advance women's rights, and which today continues to work in the special consultative status in the United Nations ECOSOC. So our today theme, the mainstreaming GEDSI principles in sustainable development in the global south, is not simply a policy aspiration. It is a moral obligation for us as women that can determine the life of a woman in the future. Please allow me to share the file for my presentation.
Yes, Prof. Okay.
So thank you very much to the MC today for to introduce me in this occasion. So GEDSI, or Gender Equality, Disability and Social Inclusion, it is a branding that really attract most of the women, particularly that support the movement for gender equality and also support the placement of disability group, and also how to invite the social inclusion into all aspects of policy and programs. And also the principle of GEDSI, ensuring the equal access to health services for all genders and people with disabilities, creating a fair work environment for all. and providing access to inclusive education for all students. So as we know that these principle become the main topic for today conference. So I would like also to highlight the new terminology maybe among us. What is the Global South? So Global South has gained popular use among leaders and also in many academia on international politics to help to describe the global division to group together countries with common position on global issues. So as you see in the map here, the global north usually are perceived come from North America countries such as USA, Canada, European nation, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Australia, and New Zealand. While global South countries usually are associated like Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Nigeria, and South Africa. So global South actually is a terminology that describe countries whose economies are not yet fully developed, or maybe is similar term with developing countries. And those countries usually face many challenges such as low per capita income, excessive unemployment, and a lack of valuable capital. So I would like to highlight where do we stand for today's discussion. As a global snapshot of GEDSI, allow me to begin by grounding our discussion based on several data that I quoted from Statista. This is a well-known institution providing updated data with various issues. So based on the Global Gender Gap Index in 2025, you can see that this index benchmark national gender gaps on economics, political, education, and health-based criteria. So in 2025, the country offering the most gender equal condition was Iceland. So with a score of nearly 0.93. So overall, the Nordic countries make up 3 of the 5 most gender equal countries worldwide. So it means that the Nordic countries are known for their high level of gender equality, including high female employment rate and evenly divided parental leave. So maybe you have question why Indonesia not on this graph. So let's check where the position of Indonesia. Most gender equal countries in the world in 2023 based on the data. According to the Gender Inequality Index or GII, Denmark and Norway were the most gender equal countries in the world in 2023 based on the report from 2024. And this report comes from the UNDP. And if you see this gender inequality index measures inequality between women and men in 3 dimensions, in reproductive health, empowerment, and the labor market. So a low GII value indicates low inequality between women and men and vice versa. So you see here, Yemen was considered the least gender equal country that same in this year. So this is very interesting, this score opening to our how the gender inequality index are very wide in terms of countries that see here from global south and from global north. Yeah. So least gender equal countries in the world in 2023, we can see also it is very surprising. According to this GII index, Yemen was the least gender equal country globally, scoring 0.814. So it means that the low GII value indicates low inequality between women and men and vice versa. So by comparison, if you see here, Denmark was considered the most gender equal country worldwide at the same year. So this is also showing that there is a divide gap between countries between global North and also global South, and then how the role of GEDSI that could we use as a platform that can reduce the inequality among countries. So we also, I would like also to highlight the average gender gap closed worldwide as of 2025 by region. So the region in North America, such as the America and Canada, Europe, Latin America and Caribbean, Central Asia, East Asia and the Asia Pacific, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Africa, Middle East and North Africa. We see here that at the current rate, it is estimated that gender parity will be achieved in 67 years. Why? We can see here the progress toward gender parity is proceeding at different speed across demographic area. As of 2025, you can see here the North America and Europe had the smallest gender gap around 75%. While if we compare to the rest of the country or Middle East and North Africa, it is close nearly 61.7%. So the higher the gap, the higher the score, it means that those countries can close the gap between men and female, while the lower score means that the wider gap between men and female. So the Global Gender Index benchmark national gender gap on economic, political, education, and health-based criteria in 2024 has been used by World Economic Forum and covering the survey for nearly 145 countries. And we also could see the performance about the percentage of gender gap closed worldwide as 2025 by dimension. So there are a significant gender gap across economic participation, educational attainment, health survival, and political empowerment dimension worldwide. So based on this score, we see that the differences among men and women remain significantly larger on political empowerment, where only 22.9% of the gap was closed. So this is also part of our challenge among women about the global gender gaps, and also in terms of the health and survival, and in terms of the educational attainment, economic participation and opportunity, and also political empowerment. So here see that the political empowerments only reach nearly 23% of the gap close. So this is very interesting also, number of years that we need, for Indonesia, from other country who has wider gaps between female and male. So number of how many years do we have to close this gap? So this data from World Economic Forum showing that how many years for Europe to close the gap between gender, between men and female, based on the study to see the gender parity. So it is very surprising. For Europe, it will need 76 years before gender gap is closed. How about in East Asia and the Pacific? We need 179%. So this study done by World Economic Forum, opening our eyes open very widely that the gender gaps are become the most important aspect, and then how we women could close this gap by improving the social inclusion, and also involving gender in many areas in the industry, in the institution, and in many role of the industry or job opportunity and extra. So progress toward gender parity is proceeding at different speed across geographic areas, as you can see here. As of 2025, it was estimated that gender parity would be achieved in Latin America alone and the Caribbean alone is in 57 years. And the Global Gender Index benchmark also the national gender gap on economic, political, education, and health-based criteria. So based on this data only, we can see that the opportunity and challenges for women are very tough, yeah, in fulfilling our dream to close this gap. So it is also interesting, the study done by Ipsos share of people worldwide who agree with the statement that giving women equal right has gone far enough in 2025 by country and gender. So most of the study, yeah, so based on this survey mentioned that in worldwide, 55% of men and 44% of women agree with the statement that gender equality has gone far enough in their countries. They are come from global average such as Indonesia, Thailand, India, Chile, Mexico. The highest values were found in Indonesia, Thailand, and India, where 3/4 or more of the respondents agree with the statement. Do you agree with the situation that giving women equal right has gone far enough in 2025? So based on the survey done by the Ipsos, it's very interesting. So most Indonesian, Thai people, and Indian feels that the giving women equal right is properly enough. Yeah. So another data that very interesting and also attract most academia, researcher, and policymaker about the share of people worldwide who feel men staying at home to care for children are less of a man in 2025. So this is the perception. If our partner or husband or man have to do a woman job, yeah, like looking after the children or staying at home to care for the kids, what the perception of the respondent. So based on the study, it shows that worldwide, slightly less than 1 in 5 think that men staying at home to care for their children are less of a man. So mean that doesn't look like the manhoodness. This was especially the case in South Korea, where nearly 3/4 had this opinion. So it is very interesting. So based on this study, you can see that in South Korea, mostly they think that men should not staying at home to care for children. While we see here mostly in global North countries like Belgium, Hungary, they perceive that men staying at home to care for children is okay. So you can see this is the percentage based on the color of the light blue, and then on the right side is the blue navy, showing the disagreement for the respondent from global north. It is also interesting, the study showing the preferred gender of political leaders worldwide in 2024 by country. So nearly 60% of the respondents in a survey had no preference regarding the gender of the political leader in their country. So worldwide. So meanwhile, if you see Indonesia, so in Indonesia, more than 60% of the respondents in Indonesia prefer a male leader, whereas more than 1/3 in South Africa would prefer a female leader. So this is very interesting data about how the GEDSI could be raised, yeah, to these matters, and then the preferred gender in a political position, and how in economic and also in health also provide diverse result. So this study was conducted by Global Institute for Women Leadership, and showing this data about how the men and women would position in the political situation. Yeah. And another data that really also interesting, based on the survey, most targeted sustainable development goal or SDGs of the environmental sustainable governance ETF, or ETF here in the exchange traded fund traded on the exchange that invest in companies that meet environmental, social, and governance criteria. So, and since today conference also put in place the issue about the SDGs and how SDGs also could be related with the principle of the GEDSI, or gender equality and social inclusion. So based on the data, most targeted sustainable development goals worldwide by 2024. So the first agenda that most favor by country, firstly, is climate action. So climate action, as designed by the United Nations, was targeted by global ESG ETF as of 2025. And then this show asset under management in billion US dollar, means that the composition of many countries for putting the area of the attention for preventing the destruction of the earth from the climate change. So we see here that the climate action is most favored by many countries. So based on this survey, and you see here the goal number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, is the second orientation that put in many respondent. And then number 6 is clean water and sanitation as the third orientation. And then number 4 is goal 7, affordability and clean energy. And then peace, justice, and strong institution become a fifth issue. Sustainable cities and communities become sixth issue, and etc. So you can see here that the targeted sustainable development goal of the ESG ETF worldwide by asset in billion also would alert us how we should put this agenda in the discussion for mainstreaming the GEDSI issue principle. So the data also showing that the estimated investment gap in sustainable development goal sector in developing countries from 2023 to 2030. This is very interesting how the role of women in energy, water and sanitation, infrastructure, food and agriculture, biodiversity, health and education really important to support the decision of many countries to invest in this area for supporting the sustainable development goal. So based on the data, this is mainly driven by investment need within the energy sector, accounting for more than half of the estimated gap. For example, based on our President Prabowo, who has a program of free meal program or makan bergizi gratis, also need the support the energy into the production of food, and also several consumption product to support the free meal program. And this annual gap in trillion US dollar also is really amaze us that the energy is still the main area of concern of many countries to support the sustainable development goals. And then this is also the data that need also become part of the GEDSI principle or platform to involve the gender equality and also the social inclusion or disability. So the biggest perceived risk to global society as of the data 2024 by long-term severity, we see here that the severity index come from the extreme weather event. So as what happened also in Sumatra recently, the flood that hit many cities in Sumatra Island, also the cause of the extreme weather changes, and then the biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse also become the perception of among respondents from country that we need to take consideration. And then critical change to earth system, climate tipping point, natural resource shortage like food, water, misinformation and disinformation, adverse outcome of AI technology, societal polarization, inequality, wealth, income, and etc. So we can see here the based on a long-term severity index, extreme weather event were ranked as the biggest risk to the world. So it's mean that how we as a woman could support the principle of GEDSI and then integrate the issue of sustainable development, particularly based on the perceived risk of the global society in seeing the severity that faced by many countries due to this kind of disasters. Yeah. So based on this data, biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse received 5.7 point, while critical change to the planet system received 5.6 point. I would like also to present the interesting data. This is the study done by Corporate Knight in 2024. So this study identify or do the survey for giving the score to a global leading company that providing the program for SDGs, for Sustainable Development Program. So the leading sustainable corporation based on score worldwide as of 2024, we see that it is very surprising that Sims Limited leads the ranking of the most sustainable corporation as of 2024 come from Australia. There are two companies come from Australia are scored as the most sustainable companies. So this is also very interesting. None of Indonesian company are in the group as the most leading sustainable companies. So this is also become our homework, how we support the movement of the ESG, the environmental, social, and governance movement to build the institution, organization, or corporation to become more sustainability alert due to a certain situation that we face recently. Yeah. And then this study also showing the opinion of the benefit from sustainability effort implemented by companies worldwide in 2024. There are 5 indicators to measure the performance of the company worldwide in their perception, what benefit from the customer that the company or corporation has done the sustainability program. And then firstly is about the addressing climate change, and then whether they have the satisfaction toward this company, and then how about the employee morale and well-being, and then also the supply chain efficiency and or resiliency, and then operating margin. So it is very interesting. This survey done by Deloitte, one of the largest one of the largest consulting firm in the world. So this study show that around 39% of C-level mean that CEO level, board of director level, and top management executive pointed out that addressing climate change was the main benefit from their company's sustainability report. It means that most companies who spend their fund to support the sustainability are get a good impression. Yeah, good impression. So meanwhile, around 38% of the executive believe that customer satisfaction was another benefit from such sustainability effort done by the corporation. So this is very interesting. Of course, it is very challenging for many corporations to spend funding by providing how to support the triple bottom helix, to support the planet, and then to provide the capability to the people, and also how the corporation also should maintain in producing the profit. Yeah. And this is also the study about share of consumer who purchase a sustainable product in the past month, and then how the role of us, the GEDSI or woman, in supporting how we should support to purchase a sustainable product. So this study done by GlobeScan. GlobeScan is a institution, and then it is collected between July to August 2024, and 30,000 respondents are involved. This study would portray the share of consumer who purchase a sustainable product in 2024 by region. So Africa and Middle East surprisingly are the most favored customer who purchase sustainable product in the past month in 2024. While in Asia Pacific, customer put as the second rank, and then Europe in the third rank, Latin America the fourth rank, and North America surprisingly are the fifth customer who favor to purchase sustainable product. Share of consumer who perceive the quality of sustainable product as better, based on a GlobeScan study also is very interesting, that most consumer who purchase the sustainable product, they perceive that cars, personal care product, cleaning product, packaged foods, clothing or apparel, electronic, home furnishing, and financial services or banking are the most favored product that purchased by customer. So this is very interesting data that the least developed country that we perceive from Africa apparently become the country that are favor sustainable product to consume by this group. So in relation to the main topic of today conference, it is noted also that SDGs is very important to be discussed. In what area actually SDGs should be discussed, and then what generation that actually alert to the issue of sustainability develop or SDGs goals. So this study showing according to consumer of all ages worldwide, and then this study classify the respondent based on generative alpha, generation Z, and millennial, generation X, baby boomer, and older generation. So this study explored the main barriers to being more sustainable according to consumer worldwide in 2023. Although this report are published in 2025, we could see here that the green one, baby boomer and older generation, cost of being more sustainable is the main concern, while generative generation or Gen Z, Gen Z 50% cost of being more sustainable. So the biggest hurdle to leading a more sustainable lifestyle is the cost that comes with it. So how we could support the sustainable development goal that has been implemented in Indonesia since 2015, it is quite challenging. Why? Because costs become the main concern among 5 generations, not only baby boomer, but also Generation X, millennial, Generation G, and Generation Alpha. And then it is very interesting also lack of available time. So we see here the green one, baby boomer and older generation see that lack of available time are become the main constraint for them to favor more sustainable product to consume. And then also knowledgeable of how to be more sustainable and knowledgeable of what to do to be more sustainable. This is those 2 issues that become the main concern. So how we in executing the GEDSI principle in supporting the SDGs among a young generation is quite challenging. And then we have to know the platform in building their awareness about supporting the sustainability through their favorable consumption. So based on the data that I have presented in today's discussion, in today's conference, Indonesia has been very serious in supporting sustainable development goals, and every year, based on the board of the Central Statistic or Badan Pusat Statistik, Indonesia has developed the indicator to measure the performance of the sustainable development goals. Such as in this report, you see that every year we can track the indicator for each indicator from the sustainable development goals. Even the government of Indonesia attending the high-level political forum on sustainable development through the Ministry of National Development Planning or Bappenas reaffirm its commitment even yearly, annually, and leadership on the global stage to achieve sustainable development. So during the 2025, the high-level political forum on sustainable development held in July 2025 at the United Nations headquarters in New York, Indonesia delivered its 4th voluntary national review on the implementation of the sustainable development goals. However, I would like to raise the question to all of us, the participants who attended this session, how the role of women in supporting more in the implementation of sustainable development goal, while the survey done by several prominent research agencies showing that it is very costly to support the sustainable product, and also it is very timely. It's need time for us to find a proper product that is sustainable to consume by the consumer, and also the preference of the woman in Indonesia to choose the leader mostly are male, and also other issue on the SDGs such as energy, water, sanitary, and etc. So based on the above discussion also, I would like to raise the issue also how the role of Indonesia in connecting the GEDSI issue as the principle to the disability issue. So based on the report published by Badan Pusat Statistik, the percentage of type 1 disabled population who are commuters by province in Indonesia is showing in 2022. So this is the latest survey done by Badan Pusat Statistik in 2022. So in DKI Jakarta is the largest, and then the rest Kalimantan Utara is the lowest. And then we see here distribution of employee population with type 3 disability by sex and employment sector, we see that the industry, the government, Indonesia has involved, has put the concern that disability as part of the industry, and then their position are really important. But how we could elaborate and then also build the grand design in building the role of the people who has this ability could become a part of the industry, could become industry or are employed by the industry. So this is my last slide. So based on the presentation, you see that based on the data, it was very surprising. There are so many challenges for us in supporting the idea of the GEDSI principles in relation to Global South, and then we see that Global North, or we perceive as advanced countries, is nearly no problem about the gender equality, while in Global South there is a huge gap that we need to close. How the gender equality can be achieved, particularly in Indonesia. So based on the data, also based on the gender gap score, so we need more than 100 years to close this gap. While even in the Global North, they need nearly 67 years to close the gap about the gender inequality. So the ideas for collaborative research and policy dialogue for today conference, firstly, is building the GEDSI scorecard for the industry, a multi-country observatory integrating data from World Bank, Statista, or BPS Indonesia, so we could track the improvement about the role of about how the woman empowerment to be part of this movement. Yeah. And then secondly, to integrate into the value chain by having the dashboard or diagnostic tool, so the gender representation at each stage of the production can be tracked. And then the third idea is how we could develop the transition innovation lab, maybe the idea to develop green and blue economic pathway for women and person with disabilities. And then the fourth is how the sustainability movement are supported by the financial industry, and then link loan tied to the GEDSI principle, such as providing more loan for small medium enterprises that mostly supported by women. So in Indonesia, 60% of the population of the small medium enterprises are supported by women, and also contributed to the economy of Indonesia. And the last, the ideas for collaborative research and policy dialogue is data about the GEDSI and the inclusive AI consortium. So the use of AI to detect bias in recruitment, promotion, and grading scoring system also become very important for us to detect about how the position of women in the recruitment, and then how the preference of the corporation to recruit in and then put in several job position, and then how the promotion of the woman in certain position. So Indonesia, based on the data showing that nearly 30% of women now could represent in the parliamentary system. So so this is the ideas for collaborative research and policy dialogue for today, as the main topic for our discussion about GEDSI mainstreaming, and then how we could connect with the role of SDGs, and also connect to the issue about the Global South Global South composition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Poppy Rufaida, for the very extensive informations about this JETSI or the GEDSI and also its relations with the sustainable developments and also particularly in the context of the Global South as our conference theme for the GCRIS this year. So while waiting for perhaps we can address one or two questions, Prof. Poppy, from the audience. So we do encourage all of the participants, if you have any questions that you want to ask to Professor Poppy Rufaida, so please let me know. So later on I can moderate the session. So meanwhile, while waiting for the participant asking the questions, perhaps you can start in dropping the questions in the chat box first, so I can see and also I can select because we have a limited times. All right. Okay, so I think Prof. Poppy, what you already mentioned, also you already revealed many data from the statistic, not only in the case of the Indonesia, but also in the case of the worldwide, both the global north and also the global south. And yes, it is interesting that the fact that if you want to close this gender gap, the gender gap in particularly in the global south, estimated to be around 100 years. It could be more than 100 years. But if we compare to the global north, also I think it's also still long. Still, I mean, like 67 years is also takes a long time. So it needs collective actions. It needs collective action from all of us.
So there are the question. I think someone has raised. Yeah.
Okay, someone is raising the hands. Okay, so it's
Syed Ashraf Sayadi.
Okay, it's coming from this. Okay, the colleague from Syed Ashraf Sayedi. So the committee perhaps can give the access for a while so she can open the mic and also ask the question to Professor Poppy. Yes, please welcome, sir. Is the committee already give the access? Yes. All right.
Hello, and regards to all the participants and professors, especially the key speakers. I'm Syed Ashraf Saidi, an emerging researcher from Afghanistan, and I have an important question about gender inequality in developing countries, especially in Asian countries. We saw in the reports of Professor, she also report that Asia is the most emerging area in the world that faces gender inequality, and how we can ensure and advance the gender inequality in developing countries, especially in the era of technologies like AI.
Yeah. Okay, I think I could answer the question. Thank you for the question, Syed Ashraf Sayedi, for your question about the emerging areas facing gender inequality, and then how we can advance gender equality in developing countries, especially in the age of AI. So emerging areas in the world where gender inequality is very intensifying. So based on the data I have presented, while traditional gender inequality persists in education, health, and employment, several new and emerging domains are experiencing widening gender gaps, such as digital and AI technologies. So women represent maybe less than 30% of the global AI workforce. So this is the global data. We can track that the involvement of women in the industry. And then in developing countries, the digital gender divide even sharper. Women are maybe 20% less likely to have access to mobile internet compared to men. So this is also quite challenging. AI system often reproduce also gender bias particularly maybe in training, maybe in hiring, and also credit scoring, public services, because this is kind of the multiplier effect of the gender gap that happen in global south. Yeah, global south is mostly is the developing countries or less developed countries. If we see based on the data, gender gap data, most country in global north are very low inequality index. So it's mean that they can reduce, they have the providing the opportunity for women in fulfilling their in fulfilling their preference, not only in education, in politics, in health, in and etc. Yeah. And green and blue economy sector, as I mentioned, job in renewable energy, climate technology, and ocean-based industry also now become very rapidly growing. However, those industry also still are rely on to male position, yeah, to male dominated position. Maybe women occupy only less than a third from this kind of job position. So how women could fill the gap or can have a role in green and blue economy sector, can support in many areas such as a software developer, while they don't have to go to the field, yeah, to the offshore field. And then the third in digital finance and fintechs, yeah, financial technology. Women women also quite quite large amount of number in fintech industry. So based on the study, fintech's products such as loan for small medium enterprise become the choice for women, because it is very easy, very fast compared to the credit loan offered by the banking industry. While banking industry quite tough, yeah, it's very selective for providing loan to certain segment in Indonesia. If we see the application of in the finance sector in Bangladesh and India, these two countries become very prominent in providing the opportunity for female who are having a small medium enterprises business, and then providing loan with a small amount of money such as 250,000 rupiah is very small, and then they can pay the installment to pay their credit. My last opinion about STEM innovation and research. Now there is the increased number of female are studying in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, particularly in Indonesia. Of course, in most global north country, the composition of women are quite equal, yeah, quite equal in studying the area of STEM. And of course, in innovation and research also, the probability of the female in getting the job and working in this area also are quite increasing. So how we can ensure and advance gender equality in developing countries, especially in the age of AI? Of course, there should be several strategy how to close the digital gender divide, yeah, in these matters. Firstly, providing affordable broadband or internet access, such as just recently, last week maybe, President Prabowo just launching Rakyat Internet for Rakyat, yeah, only 29,000 rupiah per month. So this is also one of the most advanced strategic, very progressive strategy. has been executed by our President Prabowo to provide the access to the internet not only for male, but for children also. I mean, the senior high school student to get access to the proper information through the internet. And then regulate AI to prevent algorithmic bias. For example, we cannot rely on to generative AI for solving any problem or for getting any information that could reduce the capability of human resources, the capability of someone to have the capacity, competencies in mastering the field of study. Yeah, so it is very important how we have to have the policy, the regulation, how to use this properly. And then providing supportive ecosystem for women, not only entrepreneur, researcher, politician, and in any job opportunity for female by providing proper policy that's supported by the government. I think that is my answer for Sayed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Poppy. I think since the time limitation, so we can address one more questions. So I would like to invite from the participants who already raised their hands. So please welcome Ms. Ayunita Ajeng Tias from UPN Veteran Jakarta. Yeah, the committee can give the access to Ms. Ayunita. Yeah, please welcome Ms. Okay, okay, you have to unmute first. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity, MC and Professor Poppy as well. And this is very insightful presentation for us, especially as it was grounded in a strong data. And referring to the data on women participation in politics, Indonesia has adopted a minimum quota at approximately 30%, if I'm not mistaken, for women. In your viewpoint, Professor, how effective has the opportunity been, and have female politicians have been able to contribute optimally, and particularly in shaping policy related to the gender equality and child protection and also environmental awareness? Given the many cases of the violation in this area, remain deeply concerned. What do you think, Professor Poppy? Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I also noticed several questions from the chat box from Cyril Odiame about the gap is too far to reach. Yeah, I agree with you. What level of political will put in place in developing economic toward reducing the wide economic gap among gender? So I think I would like to answer based on the question that I read from the chat box and also the question from Ayunita. So the representation of a woman in you mentioned in the political area now quite challenging. How we should provide the opportunity for a woman, particularly women in any level, background, education, and etc., to have the good access to education from elementary to junior high school and also to higher education, and also of course providing non-formal education such as courses also, or homeschooling. This is become very common in global north. So for example, when I was the education and cultural attaché in Indonesian Embassy in Washington DC, the US, homeschooling become the favored platform for several segments of the parents. And then a student who pass the test they developed by the government or by the association, they can be accredited, so they can have the accreditation. They can also test for such as paket C, ya, SIP package from the Ministry of Education before in Indonesia. So all opportunity for women for learning should be provided not only by us, by the government, by the community, by anyone. So this could become the platform for enhancing the opportunity for building the capacity and also woman preference, maybe in science, yeah, in biology, chemistry, or physics, in engineering, in social science, and also maybe in business. This could lift up the preference of the woman. So Indonesia, I think, become one of the example about the number of women in politics or in legislative that now reach 30% from the total number of the politician in the parliamentary. However, Indonesia still need the challenge. In the cabinet, only we can see that only few female has the opportunity to be trusted by the government to lead the position. But maybe in several ministries on the second level of job position, maybe as the secretary of the ministry, as the deputy or the director, the opportunity or the composition of female in that position are increase very rapidly. So I would like also to inform ya to Ibu Ayu Nita about the challenges that we need to solve, and then by inviting all prominent stakeholder who has awareness the importance of GEDSI principles, and then how we put in education. Education, in my opinion, it is one of the strategic platform tools that can we support, and then we have to provide more opportunity, yeah, for a woman to learn anything, not only, as I mentioned, not only in higher education, but also in other platform, non-formal education, such as courses, the courses such as to become the makeup artist, yeah, to become someone in fashion stylist, videographer, and etc. So this is very important. So my last comment, yeah, my last answer, what need to be strengthened? Firstly is capacity building and leadership development for women in politics is really important. So the center for the GEDSI at your university or many university could become the center, yeah, for providing this capacity building and leadership development for women in politics. And then greater placement of women in strategic committee need the support not only from academia, from the business, from the government also. And then gender responsive budgeting. So the policies are backed by real financing commitment. So there should be a commitment to provide the allocated budget. For example, maybe the scholarship for women to become woman leader in several area should be also allocated not only by many sector. Yeah, we can also create a scholarship for women only. As you see that there's a huge gap, yeah, the gender gap. We see we need 175 years in Southeast Asia to reduce this gap. Yeah. And then stronger protection mechanism against gender-based discrimination and political violence toward women candidates. This is also really important. And then lastly is better data system to monitor violation and ensure accountability. So we also notice in the social media many women are abused, not only physically in the household, and also in the worker sexual abuse, and also the opportunity for getting things also become very common in Indonesia, not only to women but also to child abuse. This is also become our main concern. Okay, I hope my answer would provide enough explanation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Poppy Rufaidah, to answer the questions which is already delivered by the participants. And I think since we have very limitation in terms of time, Prof, so I think we must continue the agenda. However, we are very grateful to have you in this TCRIS 2025. And later on, for all the participants who are already asking the question in the Zoom chat box, thank you so much. And then we will post it in the community platform, and then we will email Prof. Poppy. So perhaps later on, you can also give the answer, and we will post it in the community platform, Prof. Poppy Rufaidah. All right, so now is the time for the appreciation moment. So as the recognitions and also the appreciation from the GCRIS 2025 committee, we would like to give this token appreciations to our keynote speaker, Professor Poppy Rufaidah. So in this occasion, we would like to welcome Dr. Henry Binsar Hamonangan Sitorus as the Vice Rector for the Academic Affairs of the Universitas Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Jakarta to give this token of appreciation. So please welcome Dr. Henry.
Should be unmute maybe.
Yes, please welcome Pak Henry.
Okay. Okay. Ini I can. Yes. Ini.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, yes.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Professor Poppy Rufaidah. On behalf of Universitas Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Jakarta, it's my honor as the Vice Rector for Academic Affairs to present this certificate of appreciation for your outstanding contribution as a keynote speaker at GCRIS 2025. Thank you, Professor, for sharing